When you get started in your career, you have no skills and you have no friends, even if you have a wonderful degree from a esteemed construction management program. So what do you got to do? Well, you get into your career and you see problems and you take initiative to solve those problems. And as you do that, you build your skills and your network of contacts. My guest today is Dan Rogers. He is the president of Blach Construction, and that's exactly what he's done over his career. And in our conversation today, we trace his career path from getting into construction, influenced by his dad, all the way to the presidency of Blach Construction, which is an innovative general contractor out of the Silicon Valley. We talk about that innovation from the perspective of how the industry has gone towards a design-build approach in the last 20 years. And Blach has married that with a prefabrication approach that has really impacted the productivity of the workers involved in the construction projects. And so our conversation revolves around that aspect of productivity and innovation, and I know you're going to find it deeply interesting. Feel free to share this with other people who you think would benefit from listening, and let's dive right into my conversation with Dan. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Dan, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thanks for having me this morning, Eric.
It's great to have you on. You're the president of Blach Construction out of the Bay Area, and I know you've been in the industry for many, many years. Can you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, how you got into construction?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. My dad was a home builder in San Jose, so I kind of grew up around residential construction. Most of my friends through high school worked for my dad, so we were, did a variety of things. And so there was a couple things I learned there. I loved the business, but I also didn't want to be a hands-on builder. To be honest, for my whole life, from a work standpoint, and so pursued a degree. Back then there was only really a couple of construction management programs in the state of California. I ended up going to Chico State and had a phenomenal group of really seasoned professional professors, all industry folks that had retired, wanted to move to a college town and teach. So it was a really practical education from a group of folks that I got to know very well, and some of them are still mentors for me today.
That's cool. So as you came out of college, Chico, did you? I went to Humboldt State, so I used to be on the rugby team at Humboldt, so we would travel over and play Chico. That was always a lot of fun.
Yeah.
As you got out of college, and did you have a construction management degree?
Yes, correct.
What was the biggest surprise that you found going into the construction industry with your shiny college degree? What was the biggest challenge you had?
Yeah, so I had a huge challenge right out of the gate. So it's kind of interesting. At that time, the average student graduating from that program had somewhere between 6 and 10 job offers on average, right? And I graduated in December of 92. And for anybody that was working back then, that was sort of the tail end of a severe recession. And so it was this really interesting period of my life that I actually look back, it was probably one of the best things that happened to me. Was I interned at a couple of places that were extraordinarily difficult internships to get. So I had kind of a gold-plated resume coming out of school in terms of experience. You think you kind of know it all, you're ready to go kind of tackle the world, and all of a sudden there's no jobs. And in fact, one of the companies had put me on scholarship for my last years of school, made me a job offer, and then they actually rescinded it about 3 months before I started because they had a massive downsizing. So I kind of came out of school, all excited, and then found myself in a place like, I've got to go find a job. And this was, pre-internet, pre-cell phone. This was like, looking through the classifieds of the San Francisco Chronicle and San Jose Mercury under construction engineering to find a job. So it was a really challenging period, to be honest with you, because it was a place I never thought I'd be, but I, through some contacts and a bunch of hard work, landed a job with a company called Summerhill Homes in Palo Alto, building single-family developments throughout the peninsula and South Bay.
That's awesome. So as you were there, were you project engineer, project manager, that kind of idea?
I actually started as an assistant superintendent on a single-family home development in Sunnyvale.
Okay, so that was a little more hands-on than being a PM or a PE. Is that right? A little more involved with the field?
Absolutely. In fact, there were moments during that phase where I went home at night and questioned like what I was doing with my life.
Why was that?
And well, it was kind of a different role than I expected, but it was at a time where I needed a job, right? I had to pay rent, and so I needed a job. But I look back at it, it was probably those years were probably some of the best. From an early formative years in terms of dealing with adversity, trying to get a lot out of people, learning a lot on the fly. I mean, they ran these jobs extraordinarily lean. And so it was really myself and a colleague of mine who became a great mentor and a good personal friend and is still a friend today, who taught me a lot. But, the two of us had to take on a lot. So you had to learn like each day on the fly, basically. And I was extraordinarily underqualified for what they had me doing, to be honest with you. So it was an interesting start of my career.
So let's talk about that a little bit more, because again, this happens all the time where, someone comes out with their shiny degree, they go onto the job site and immediately, the foreman or the guys in the field, the gals in the field are just looking right through you. What advice do you give to a fresh college graduate who's whatever position they're in, whether it's an assistant superintendent or a PE or something like that? What advice would you give to them in terms of how to show up on the job site?
One, show up early, right? Show up early, make coffee in the morning, and come in each day with a mindset of trying to grow and get better. Right. I mean, the reality is when you come out of we hire all these great kids who come out of these great programs. They're brilliant. But the reality is their knowledge base to what we do is really in the infancy stage. Right. And I think there's a period of them realizing that as they start to plug in. And so, I encourage folks. And the other thing is, I was having this conversation with another executive about a week ago is there's probably very few people who love their first job. Right? I didn't love mine, actually. And so the story of, it may take you a few years to get settled into your career path. It may take you some time, and it may take you some time to find, even within an organization, a role that you actually love. And so, but it's about realizing when it's hard when you're in it, but that you're growing tremendously during those early years, and embrace that and start laying the foundation of really a personal network throughout whatever organization or industry you're in. That's probably the biggest.
Okay, so that's a tremendous insight there. So how do you, as obviously you're in a role now where you're far above that positionally, but you're observing the people that you've hired. How do you help them? How do you communicate that insight to them where you have someone who's talented but perhaps going through a hard time as they're beginning their career? How do you retain those types of people in your organization long term?
Yeah, so we do a number of things internally. The GC business creates some challenges in terms of just logistics, right? Like we'll hire a young professional out of school. They'll come in, we'll give them, the basic kind of training to get going. And then they're usually assigned to a project that's outside of the corporate office. And it's somewhat of an island, right? Or can be. And so what we do there early is we pair new employees up with a cross-sectional group of mentors at all different levels so that they, because I think the biggest thing when you're new to an organization or new to an industry, it's just you have zero context. And so we try to team them up with people who at varying levels that they feel comfortable with, but to try to answer their questions and help them understand context and realize that, hey, struggles are normal. And, because the reality is we hire all these phenomenal kids today who have succeeded so well academically. Not succeeding is a huge issue for them. And quite frankly, many are afraid to fail because it's a different environment than the academic environment, right? And so, but we look for all of these unique things in our hiring process and skill set and try to, we have a very robust college recruiting program that we've had in place for nearly 20 years. And it gives us a great opportunity to bring, young talent in and them to get to know Blach Construction and us to get to know them at a deep level and make sure that it's a mutual fit for both sides.
On the mentorship aspect of it, is that something that's intentionally done where you're going to someone and saying, hey, Dave, I'd like you to mentor Sarah as she's getting through the first few years of her, her career?
Yeah, we do a number of things actually. We rotate people. We've used an outside consulting group called Lighthouse that we run all new sort of folks that we think have management and leadership potential through. We've now put about 60 or 65 folks through that really focuses on the company's values, but really this concept of trust. And when trust is established amongst people and there's deep connections, the results and outcomes become exponential. And so we try to get them to, one, understand our company's value system, this concept of trust in an organization and trust amongst your colleagues. And then, we have, so everybody goes through that program, and then we have specific assignment of mentors that we think, that happen amongst our HR and our hiring really team that we think are good resources for folks as they come in to rely on. And that's been really an instrumental aspect of our new employee orientation, hiring, startup, and getting integrated into the company.
In your experience, what's the most important aspects of establishing trust in a relationship?
I think it has to be earned over time, right? You can talk about trust, but it's you're sort of making credit deposits, right? And you build those up over time. But I think at the leadership level within our organization, we have a very diverse group at the leadership level across the board. And I think that group demonstrates a high level of trust. And I think that transcends through the organization. And with a brand new person coming on, it may take them a while to see it. But I think, we have an extraordinary culture in our company. Trust is a big aspect of that. And I think it's palpable at some level when people walk in our door.
When you say diverse, what do you mean by that?
I think, obviously our company and the whole industry and quite frankly, the country's, focused on this issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We really started focusing on it, 15 years ago, in all transparency, primarily focused on gender. And we put a super intentional focus on trying to hire as many qualified women as we could out of construction and engineering programs. And today, our leadership team in round numbers is about half females, which is very unique for a general contractor of our size in California. And we think it's provided us with a tremendous amount of value. And so today, as we move forward, we're just continuing to try to diversify the company in all aspects and make sure that everybody that walks through our door feels highly included.
How do you how have you balanced the pursuit of diversity with the need for performance? Is there any tension in that, or have you found that tension has been something that you've been able to work through?
I think there is a tension, or I would actually describe it as an uncertainty, right? Our company, we've really started focusing on this issue intensely a couple of years ago. I think we've made extraordinary progress, but it's a really sensitive issue. It is, and it is, I think, primarily because it's somewhat of a nebula. It's a massive spectrum of an issue, right? When you're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think defining it, which is the phase we're at as a company right now, we brought a consulting group in to help us focus on this issue, and they're working with our leadership team right now after going through focus groups throughout the company to try to develop a really clear roadmap for folks so that when we're talking about this subject, people know exactly what we're talking about. And I think when we take a lot of the uncertainty out of it and the guesswork out of it, there won't be as much, uncertainty or frustration or confusion around the topic, quite frankly.
Yeah, so I think that's interesting you talk about that, Dan, because I view often, I look at construction specifically, but business in general, kind of in the sense of team sports. Because, like when we look at professional sports, and when it comes to diversity, like on a sports team, at the end of the day, what we care about is winning. And I don't care if you're, who you are, if you can contribute to the winning of the sports team. You see where I'm going with the analogy there?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's been our mindset.
Yeah, that's interesting there. So as you're involved in your career, at what point did you get into more of a leadership role?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I started at Summerhill Homes. I was really there for about 2.5 years, and actually a woman that I worked for in one of my internships became a recruiter, and was at that time Stanford University was ramping up their building group to take on a lot of the issues that had happened from the Loma Prieta quake in '89, and then just a big building program. And at that time, Stanford was probably the largest, one of the largest owner builders in the Western United States. And so they were ramping up their team, and I left Summerhill and joined Stanford University in their capital improvement program team as a project manager. And it was interesting. I was probably 25, 26 years old. New different environment, and over the course of about 6 years, just kept taking on bigger projects, more diverse projects. At that time, Stanford was probably building some of the most complicated and unique projects anywhere on the planet, quite frankly, things that had never been built before. So it was fascinating, all in a very political environment. I mean, at the end of the day, Stanford's a phenomenal institution. But it's an institution, and so a lot of challenges when you're doing $300 or $400 million of work a year on very, very complex jobs that have never been built before. But I look back at that time there, and I learned so much about the industry because I saw it from the owner's perspective. So I saw it from being an owner with huge challenges in terms of trying to just define. We would get researchers that were doing such specialized research that every element of their lab or their studio had to basically be invented. So it was this really dynamic, environment. And then, to see it from that standpoint, and then to understand the design process, because we were managing that, and then also the construction process and the client management. And we would, our client base was everything from the athletic director to the head of the law school to the head of housing. And so, it was a really diverse group of projects we built. And over that time, about 7 years, I went from being a project manager to basically being sort of second in charge of that group. And I learned, it was like a full-time MBA program, quite frankly, over the 7 years I was there. I probably learned more working there than actually I would have if I would have gone to grad school there. So, I learned an incredible amount, and really cherished my time there.
That's great. So being on the owner side and seeing that owner's perspective, what's the biggest misconception that contractors have in terms of the way that owners approach projects?
Yeah, I mean, being a contractor, it's a little bit hard to say, but I'll be honest. I just think that the average sort of project manager for GC, their view of the process, the project, our industry is just very narrow. And it's very difficult to understand the broad picture unless you've kind of been through it. And so it's not a criticism. It's more of an objective take, I think, on what the industry is somewhat plagued by is architects. I mean, owners, architects, and contractors each play a pivotal role, but they're really experts in their unique environment, right? It takes all three to really work well. I would say that the industry is probably plagued by the average project built in Silicon Valley, it's usually large, it's usually complex, and it may very well be the biggest project or task that somebody takes on the owner side. And I'd say the biggest thing we see is owners struggling to really understand what they want, trust the consultants, take their advice, because they're balancing a whole bunch of things in this super, high cost market that we deliver projects in.
So how do you help your project managers to take a broad perspective while maintaining the interests of your company?
Yeah, so we do a lot of training in this area, probably more than most, I think. And we do a lot of training. So one is we do a lot of cross sectional training in the organization, where we try to get people to work in various groups that have aspects to various aspects of the project and the process. And then we do a lot of really focused training about understanding at the end of the day, we're only successful if our clients are successful and our architect partners are successful and the designers that we work with. And once you kind of get to that mindset, it's not a zero-sum game for Blach Construction. You know, we see folks better understanding the bigger picture and what we're trying to do.
Okay, so how did you go from Stanford to Blach? Was that the jump that you then made, or how did that happen?
Yeah, I actually left Stanford and I was part of a technology startup. I was one of three co-founders of a technology startup. This was, like right during the dot-com phase,
Yeah, right.
and worked with a couple of guys. And when I went into the thing, I told my wife, I said, hey, I'm going to do this for maybe a year, 14 months. And then if not, I'll go back to like the real world. And yeah, we started this company. It was acquired about 14 months after we started it was focused on the supply chain and procurement within the supply chain for the construction industry, and a large construction consortium came in and acquired it. And so we all stayed on for a few months, and then I went home. There was a lot of travel, a lot of late nights. My kids were young, and so I went home and I didn't do anything for 3 months.
Nice.
And trying to figure out what am I going to do next. And then after 3 months at the park, I was kind of like, it might be time to get my career going again here. And so a friend of mine who went to grad school at Stanford and actually worked in the housing group when I was there, became a friend. He took a job at Blach Construction, and he called me up and he said, hey, you want to have lunch and just kind of catch up? And I said, yeah, what are you doing? And I had worked with, most large generals in the Western United States were trying to do work at Stanford. So I knew the landscape quite well. I had heard of Blach, but hadn't worked with him, didn't know much about him. So he and I had lunch. He talked about the company. I was looking for something to do, and he thought I could be helpful in sort of strategically, where was the company going? How can we get into some new markets? Back then, this is in 2001, general contractors were trying to develop a construction management expertise to complement their business, and that was kind of my initial focus. And the company was in the education market, but we started really focusing on delivery methods within that market. And to simplify it, that it just really blossomed for us over the next 5 years. And education went from being 20% of the company's volume at that time to about 85 or 90% in about a 5-year period.
Hey, this is Eric. Hope you're enjoying my interview with Dan. And right now, I'd like to tell you about my book, Construction Genius: Effective, Hands-On, Practical, Simple, No BS, Leadership, Strategy, Sales, and Marketing Advice for Construction Companies. It's interesting. You might wonder where I got that subtitle from. Well, I got it directly from one of my clients. I was chatting with him about the leadership training that I provided for his company. And he said, Eric, what I like about you is that the stuff that you communicate is effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS. So I took that, I put it into the subtitle of my book, and now you can go out to Amazon, purchase the book for you and your leadership team, and benefit from my 2 decades of experience working with construction companies. You're going to love this book. It's all killer, no filler. Get your copies today. And now let's go back to the interview with Dan. So let's talk about that a little bit. That's in terms of delivery methods. What have you seen in the industry, in your experience, in their time in the industry, in terms of delivery methods and how construction services are purchased?
Yeah, I think it's every 10 years there's a new trend, I would say. But I think where it's all landed after a couple of decades is more owners trying to utilize design build as an approach where they're engaging the contractor to really lead the process. And in that environment, we have the ability to leverage our expertise, the expertise of our design partners, and the expertise of our subcontractors and supply chain, I think, to deliver better results overall in terms of cost and quality and speed and just control. And so, I think there was a decade-long movement to bring contractors in early, but we were always brought in after the designer, and some level of the project was already formulated. So when we're in the design build mode and we're brought in from the onset, it just gives us a a ton of ability to leverage our expertise. And what we've been trying to do as an organization is move more of the building process to a factory prefabrication environment. So we're huge believers philosophically that our job sites are the assembly line, and our existing supply chain and our own prefabrication efforts allow us to build traditional buildings how we build them, but in components or modularized in a way that we could do more of the work in a factory setting that's highly efficient, and reduce the time and the speed and improve the quality of what takes place out on the job site. And so that's really where our focus has been over the last decade, and we've seen phenomenal results in this area.
That's interesting because you're marrying, there are two trends, right? Obviously, firstly, the design build trend and then the prefabrication trend coming together. As you've gone through that process, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've come across that, as you've worked through them, have had the biggest benefit to the company in terms of how you're delivering your projects?
Yeah, huge challenges every step of the way because it's all new, right? So everything from the technology tools that we select and then we get into, and they may not be the right tools for what we really needed, to the equipment that we buy to operate our prefabrication shop and how it's laid out, changing all of the time because we just couldn't anticipate where things ultimately end up. So a lot of challenges. I mean, I think at the end of the day, what we're seeing, at the end of the day, the San Francisco Bay Area is the most expensive construction market to build in the country, right? San Jose in particular. What really drove us to start focusing on this a decade ago was this bold idea of, if we could solve the cost problem, because at that time we didn't feel anybody had really solved the cost problem, right? We could really win in our space. And so the goal was to focus not on management process improvements, but worker productivity enhancements and improvements. And so everything that we're doing in this entire area, the end goal is to make it more efficient for our workers, right? Where the Bay Area is by and large a union construction market. It's a very expensive market. We have super talented, skilled people that we pay a lot of money to work, right? And so they're ready to go. We just, as an industry, needed to provide an environment that really allows them to leverage their strengths and do their craft in a way that they're really proud to do what they do, but also to bring great ideas and to get more efficient in it each day. And by moving more of the work to a factory environment, we're able to accomplish that. And it's super compelling. We developed a product called Folia for the education market, which is it's a traditional two-story classroom building. They're about 13,000 square feet. And we've taken that entire building to where about 30% of it is built in our prefabrication facility in San Jose, or amongst our subcontractors, prefab shops that are part of our supply chain. And we're just finishing our 26th and 27th of those buildings, and we've gotten highly efficient with them. So it's one of these true wins where the client gets, and the nice thing about this product is a client can go walk through it, feel it, see it, touch it, ask questions. Our ability to predict the cost and the timing are dramatically improved over anything else that we're building. And at the end of the day, they get a phenomenal quality building for a super competitive price. And so that model of Folia, we're trying to implement across all of the work that we do.
So let's explore this a little bit more then, Dan. When it comes to this idea of prefabrication, how much work do you guys self-perform proportionately?
Well, currently, I mean, as a company, we self-perform concrete, wood framing, metal stud framing, and then we prefab a variety of things. So we prefab some of the form work for our concrete work that we self-perform, et cetera. Our goal is to try to move as much of the work that would take place, as much as the labor that would take place on site, over time, move that to a factory environment. I would say, like with Folia right now, it's probably 30 to 40% of the labor hours that would take place on site now take place in the factory environment. And but other projects it may be 10%, depending on how far we've been able to push the prefab effort as it relates to design. But over time, we see that growing. And I think for every hour over the long haul that we can move to a factory shop environment where it's optimized and it's efficient, our projects will benefit, our clients will benefit, our workers benefit. It's a true win across the entire spectrum.
So your MEP stuff, that's done by your subs?
Correct.
Okay, so how are you incorporating the MEP aspects into the prefabrication, or how are you working with the subs in terms of how that's all coordinated together?
Yeah, so again, most of this is probably in the design build arena. So again, they're brought in very early to basically design the system, and they're doing the same thing. Quite frankly, the subcontractor base is way ahead of where generals have been in this space. They've been doing it for years, quite frankly, right? And they just needed more people to allow them to do this versus, a design dictated, them trying to meet a performance spec. But it's been a process, right? Things take time to change. But I would say the most sophisticated work going on in this space is at the sub level, and they're pushing this as hard as anybody. And so it's giving us the ability to buy or procure their services for a lower cost. That allows us to be more competitive, and then for us both to win because we're doing the work more efficiently.
What do you think the limitations of prefabrication are in terms of the scope of work that's performed? Where is it? It can go this far, but no more.
Yeah, it probably depends on the particular project, right? Like with our Folia building, I think over time, 50 or 60% of the labor hours could move to the shop as we continue to refine that. I think in a project, because that's a repetitive project that we've built, 26 of them. We hope to build another 25 or 26 of them, right? So with each one, we get more refined. On traditional projects, though, I think we'll see, 10 to 20% of labor hours move to a factory, and over time, hopefully more.
How do your labor partners, the unions, respond to this this initiative, this push in terms of the relationship between you and your workers and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, they're super supportive. I mean, it's an environment that for the average tradesperson is highly conducive to, it's safe, it's clean, it's organized, and it gives them the opportunity to really leverage their strengths and their own growth mindset, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I think what our industry is plagued by is, designers, the average designer in the region is phenomenal. They have great people all the way through the entire thing. Builders are very qualified. We have like really experienced people. But I think if you look at the average project built in California, the problem is it changes 8 or 10 times through the course of it. So there's no efficiency, right? There's no, like people talk about schedules, and it's like, well, we put together these schedules, and then they never really are realized in that fashion. And so if you're a tradesperson, you're coming out and you've done a full day's work, and you come out the next day, and you're directed to change course. There's an emotional loss, right? Because these folks are sort of wired to be productive. Whereas once you move to the factory environment, it's a different level of efficiency and pride and team sport, to the analogy you used earlier, Eric. And so, like if you saw our wood frame or our metal stud frame folks in our shop, I mean, they're a true team, and it's a well-oiled machine. And from that, everybody again is benefiting.
Interesting. Pivoting back then, as you got into Blach Construction, how did you describe your journey from coming into the company to your current role now of being president?
Yeah, it was fairly organic, actually. Mike Blach, who's our chairman today, his dad started the company in 1970, and then really tragically, passed away really young at 50. And Mike was really thrust into the leadership role to keep the company going. It was fairly small at that time, but had a phenomenal group of employees that were. Loyalty is a dramatic understatement. I mean, they were beyond loyal to the company, and out of this tragedy, I think, came this very galvanizing moment, right, where they sort of rallied around Mike and said, "Let's keep this thing going," and everybody started working. So when I came on board, I don't know where the company was volume. I think it was probably in the 40 million type range, and we maybe had 50 employees or so, and so it was pretty flat, quite frankly, And it was interesting because although I had managed a lot of GCs, I hadn't really come up through the traditional GC ranks, right? So it was kind of a learning curve for me. getting to know the organization. But, what I was drawn to about the company, because the company wasn't the biggest at the time, they weren't a brand that, quite frankly, I was familiar with, but I was really drawn to the strength of the people and this feeling of allegiance that existed in the organization, right? And I think they had some phenomenal, some of the best field people at that time that I had met. And so, and just a great culture. And I literally just plugged in and tried to learn as much as I could every day. And then I tried to solve problems. I'd see that areas where we needed to grow, and I would carve out the time and put energy into it. And it's kind of funny because I look back at my 20 years, Mike and I have worked really closely together, and I look back, and although, for a good number of my years I've reported to him, I'm not sure in those 20 years he's ever really asked me to do anything. To be honest, I don't think he's ever asked me to, hey, let's go start a regional focus here or there. It's been kind of the other way, which he's given me the support and bandwidth to make change and drive progress. And, I've done the best I could in that area. And so, and it's interesting, Eric, because in today's world, and I've always tried to figure out, is it me? Is it the era that I was, born and raised in, or just how I'm wired? But, I see so many of our folks today want and need a roadmap on their career, and they want this really defined career path. And I look back at it because I never had an ounce of a career path or a roadmap put out. I just sort of put my head down, worked hard, made great relationships, and I played a lot of sports growing up, and always been this kind of like team mindset person, and I want our team and my team to be successful, and I each day try to do my part to do that. And so I think we have an organization of folks that have that mindset, but we've also seen with the current generation, they're more talented, they're more resourceful, they're super loyal and dedicated, but they definitely want and need more of a roadmap and to figure out how to progress through the organization. And instead of resisting that, we've been trying to create more of that for them, and so trying to adjust to the people that we have and their needs. And, we're really excited about the future. I think our company from 20 years of hiring really great talent. And, if you look at the average tenure of our leadership team, I mean, the average person's been there probably close to 15 to 20 years, which is a unique element, I think, of our company. And so these are, I look at it, I mean, I'm 54. I pretty much grew up in the company, even though I started there in my 30s. And I kind of grew up and developed my career with all of these folks. And they've been really like my source and inspiration. Like without their support, I wouldn't be in the role that I'm in today.
It's interesting. I'd just like to, I think what you're getting to here, Dan, is interesting because you're touching on some concerns that people have about generational differences. But I think in this interview, we've teased out some things that are very important for building a career. So I just want to summarize those. You were mentioning as you came into the industry, you had a degree, but you had no skills and no friends. You know what I mean? You had no network and you had no real technical skill. So your first job is to build your skills and to build your network of contacts. And I think you articulated it well. The way that you do that is by seeing problems and then taking the initiative to do something about solving those problems.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I had a couple of great mentors, who early on sort of said, "Hey, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, our business is fraught with challenges, right? I mean, every business is, but I mean, daily we're challenged with something, right? Whether it's a subcontractor issue, a supply chain issue, a cost issue, a health issue, or you name it. It's every day. There's hundreds of issues literally throughout the company." And the thing I learned early in my career was, hey, it's really easy to, when challenges are presented, it's really easy to identify the challenge, right? It's really easy to identify the challenge and bellyache about it and complain about it. But at the end of the day, that does absolutely nothing to solve the issue at all, right? And it's a huge bandwidth drain. And quite frankly, it's like, you look at it cumulatively, it can be an emotional drain across a huge group of people. And so, and don't get me wrong, like, we're all people and we're not perfect. I probably find myself in that place sometimes, but the majority of times what I've tried to do is channel my energy to a place of, hey, how can this be solved? Whether I can solve it or I can bring people in to help solve it. Because if we don't solve it, I'm just going to be talking about it from a month from now, right? I think if what I would tell people, I tell you, we just had a big executive training with this Lighthouse group this week, and it was all about this issue of one, confrontation, but solving problems. And we think we have an organization of problem solvers and people where there's a high level of trust, but to try to, every time there's an issue, rather than identifying the issue, that's kind of the easy thing, right, to do, is try to channel your energy in a way that, like, hey, how can I contribute to a solution here, or bring people together to solve this issue if I'm not able to on my own? And that's all of a sudden becomes a pretty powerful outcome versus the alternative.
So do you have a particular framework that you use when you've identified an issue to go through this problem solving process? Is it just something you do based on your intuition, or how do you go about that, Dan?
I mean, me personally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no, I just, I'm pretty reliant on my instinct. Probably use less analytics at time and more gut feel. But I think the reason I do that is, Eric, is, if I was the president of Blach and I'd been there 5 years, I wouldn't be able to do that. But I've been there 22 years. I've worked with the vast majority of our employees for a very long time, know most of them at a very deep level. So it's a unique aspect of, if I need to get the pulse for an issue in the company, I generally know who to go to get it. And it's not always right, but it's about 90% right. And so from that, I can make a lot of decisions really quickly versus having to spend hours and hours to try to figure out, hey, what's actually kind of going on here, right? And I think, where we've had the biggest challenges as an organization is we've had very steady and consistent growth. And every time we grow, new opportunities are created, but it creates these gaps, right? We're trying to grow. We haven't moved organizationally people into the right roles yet, because we're just starting to do a new aspect of our business we've never done before. And so the biggest thing I've been focusing on, aside from strategy on where are we going over the next decade, is internally who on the bus needs to be in what seat as we continue to evolve and these new opportunities come up. And we've done a lot of internal movement that I think will continue to go on in the future. And I think we're able to do that because we know our people really well, we know their skill sets, and there's a high level of trust. And so you can move people into positions and they'll take on that challenge and really drive it to a successful place.
How do you keep your edge personally in terms of having an innovative mindset?
Yeah, it's been really easy because it's been two things. It's been extraordinarily energizing to see the progress we've made in some of these areas and the results it's had for our company. I would say that, so we've had tremendous growth over the last 4 or 5 years. I would say that the number one element that's committed to that has been our focus on innovation and bringing new solutions to clients that nobody else is bringing. And so from that, it gives me a ton of energy. And in fact, because there was a time, Eric, in my career where I said, oh man, like the glory years of the GC world in Silicon Valley were probably 1970 as the Valley was building out into maybe like 85, right? Or so. But my son, who just graduated from Cal Poly's construction management program, I obviously talked to him a lot about this stuff, and I'm going, Thomas, like the industry is going to change in such positive ways, I think, throughout your career, that there's just going to be phenomenal opportunities for somebody like of his age, right? And that's what has me most excited.
It's interesting because as we get into our 50s, and it's easy to get set in our ways, and I think it's important for us to be able to keep our minds open to a variety of different inputs so that we can stay on the edge of, healthy innovation.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I've seen is, whether it's in our organization or just in our industry, the velocity of change in Silicon Valley is so dramatic, right? I mean, that it's pretty easy to become obsolete in about 3 years if you're not grown. I mean, it's sometimes I wish it wasn't like that, right? Sometimes I wish it was a little easier, but it probably wouldn't be as exciting either. But I've seen this with people in our organization and others where, yeah, if you like, I look at like our own organization and somebody like takes a leave of 3 months, right? So much happens in that period. Them coming back, it's like there's a lot to get up to speed on. So I've seen people over time, a 3-4 year period where if you're not highly engaged and sort of evolving in your role, it's pretty easy to get out of touch, if you will. And so, for me, I'm involved with a lot of aspects of our company. And it's interesting because there's been times where I get done with the year and I'm like, wow, can I really do more next year? Right? Do I have like another gear? And it's been interesting since I took over in 2017. Each year I've kind of felt like, wow, I've found a whole new gear. But I think for me it's been easy because we have so much talent in the company that they're the ones that are really driving all of this positive change, and I'm just a part of it. It energizes me every day when I go in.
So how do you, in your role, obviously you have a great deal of responsibility. How do you manage your time and your energy on a day-to-day basis so that you stay at, a level of performance that's acceptable to you?
I've been, sort of learning and evolving. I think, pre-COVID actually, so I've been a couple of years into this new role, and I started reading a few things, and one of the things I realized is, I was working very hard, right? I was working like really hard, like, you go in the morning, maybe you have HR issues at 7 o'clock you're dealing with, and you have a client dinner at 7 o'clock that night, and you're home at 10, right? And that's Tuesday, and then you have another one of those on Thursday, right? So by Friday comes around, you're like, you've been on the treadmill all week, right? And the thing I think I learned, Eric, and I started to adjust my and back then, Eric, my calendar was stacked from basically Monday to Friday. Like my assistant Megan couldn't find an hour in there, right? Like literally running from meeting. And what I realized is I was watching a couple of these podcasts and doing some reading, and took the advice of some folks that out of this research, which was, I need to create more time to like think and focus and focus on decisions and not just be on the treadmill. And so if you look at my calendar today, I probably have one of the most open calendars in the company. And it's like super intentional. And so because I'm involved in a lot of aspects, I usually come in each week and my set schedule usually morphs by about 50% from what's set that week to where I ultimately apply my time. And so I try to create more time for thinking, more time for thinking about where the company's going, more time thinking about our people and how could we organize them to achieve our goals. And that's been extraordinarily helpful for me. And it's given me, I think, through the process, like a better balance, and I'm actually more effective.
How did you go through the process of retraining yourself and others in terms of how your calendar was structured and managed?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would have gotten there fully if it wasn't for COVID. COVID, so it was kind of interesting. Like pre-COVID, kind of started this thinking, trying to move in that direction, and then COVID hit and it all stopped, right? Yeah. And then post-COVID, I sat there and I get invited to like a work event or dinner 5 nights a week, right? And so if you put that on to like a 8 or 9 hour day, then it's every day's 12 or 13 or 14 hours. And don't get me wrong, some of these things are actually fun and enjoyable and entertaining, that kind of thing. But COVID really, like post-COVID, I really said, it made me look at it, and although the things I were doing were probably good, I don't think they were really that super valuable, many of them. And so it sort of, and I'm still there today. I mean, I would say I do 25% of the night events that I did sort of like pre this process or pre-COVID. And it allows me to figure out which things I go to are actually important that I need to be. And those primarily revolve around our people and our clients. And so I'm very connected to a large percentage of our clients, and so I still am really committed to those folks, and I'm really committed to our people as we grow, that they know that at the highest level, we're committed to them as people. And at the end of the day, that they're the source of the company's strength. And trying to build trust with those folks, it's hard to do if you're not connecting with them regularly.
How did that change in your perspective in terms of the evening events impact your performance during the day?
Not sure, actually. I think it probably just allowed my mind to slow down a little bit. You know what I mean? I think it's easy to, like at the end of the day, I should probably only be making like one or two decisions a day that are very important. And we have such talented folks in the company that the majority of the decisions should be made by others. And so I think, previously I would be involved with all kinds of decisions. And I think my team will tell you, like, I don't want to be involved with like 90% of the decisions that are made in the company. I want to try to stay focused on like the things that could change the direction or course of the organization over time. Right. And so that's the role I'm in. And it's interesting because, like the analogy you use, when I grew up, I played football and I was a safety. And as a safety, you get to see the game from a really interesting perspective. And so the analogy I'd use is like today, because I know the people, I know our clients, I know our business partners, I see the business from a I think a pretty unique perspective. And my big goal has been trying to stay as plugged in as I can and continue to grow and evolve. Like I think it's interesting. I think most people in my role, you get there and you're kind of like, yeah, hey, I've gotten to this point, but I sort of feel like I have to grow each year as much as anybody in the company. Conceptually, that might sound like I was going, like, is that too much? But it's actually been super energizing for me, and it's interesting. But my big takeaway has been, hey, let's get off the treadmill. Let's get more time to focus and focus on the things that are really important.
Yes. Yeah, I think this is really important what you're talking about here, Dan. And I think every person, particularly someone in your position who's listening to this discussion, you really need to reflect on, are you spending time on things that are important and things that, like you said so well, those one or two decisions that only you should be making or only you can make based on your experience and the position in your organization, and then allowing others, empowering others to make the decisions that they should be making.
Correct. Yeah, for sure. Because at the end of the day, what I've found, and I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of people really struggle making decisions and over time have to get more experience to get more comfortable. But I could tell you, I would say 95% of the time, the person, even if they're reluctant, they're in the best position to make the respective decision. They just might need some coaching or facilitation how to get there, right? And the more decisions they make, the more comfortable they get. But the thing I'm most excited about is I think our current leadership team is I would say we're on the young side, but it's a super energized group that's smart, and I think the long tenure amongst them and the high level of trust, the future for Blach Construction is really bright.
That's tremendous. So as we're wrapping up here, Dan, and you've been very generous with your time, we talked about the sort of the marrying of design build with prefabrication. What do you think is the next technology or innovation that's coming into the construction into the construction industry that's going to have a significant impact in the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think it's primarily in this area. I think there's a long way to go in terms of moving the construction process to more of a manufacturing environment, and different. In all reality, there's been billions of dollars funneled in to large ventures that have tried to create this concept.
You mean like Katera?
Yeah, Katera, and there's a whole host of others, right? And but the reality is, if you look at the UK in terms of modularized design, volumetric modular type construction, I think they've been ahead of the United States quite a bit. But if you look at the big three in the UK, they've all failed, right? And in fact, they're all basically not in business any longer. And so I applaud the effort, but I think the fundamental philosophical difference we see is trying to create. We don't think you can build traditional buildings in a shop in big components and ship them. We think that's not super efficient. We don't think it's actually even more. It sounds great, but I don't think unless you can get enough repetitive volume in place, it's ever going to be a profitable venture. I think that from that, you've got to learn the hard way and make mistakes and spend a lot of money to get there. from that, I think there's been a lot of good. And I think what's come out of it is people realize, but you can build components and take the existing supply chain to the next level. And as builders become more of the lead in the design and construction process, we'll be able to guide more work with our existing supply chain to that place and optimize the work that our tradespeople do.
Yeah, I like that, because what we're talking about here is not being overwhelmed by the hype, and then understanding the limitations based on the realities of construction to prefabrication, and then embracing those limitations, but doing your best within what you're doing offsite to maximize that and optimize that. Did I hear that right?
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, Dan, I really, really appreciate your time. As we're wrapping up here, you've mentioned that you're down there in San Jose. So if I'm down in San Jose, what's the one restaurant I should hit?
Down in San Jose, there's a restaurant called Original Joe's in downtown San Jose. That's kind of a staple landmark. That's not super fancy, but good Italian Greek food that you'd probably love, Eric.
Excellent. We are going to look at Original Joe's in downtown San Jose and make sure that that's in the show notes. Dan, you've been, again, very generous with your time. I appreciate you joining us today on Construction Genius.
All right, Eric. Thanks for having me, and have a great weekend.
Thanks for listening to Construction Genius today. That was a killer conversation, and feel free to share it with other people who you think would benefit from it. And then do me a quick favor, will you? Go out to wherever you get your podcasts and give Construction Genius a rating and a review. It's important because through that process, the show gets seen throughout the interwebs, and more people can benefit from killer interviews like the one that you just listened to. I really appreciate it. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode.